So, what's the frames per second of the human eye? It's a question that, gamers and tech geeks have been kicking around forever. Today, we're going to dive right into that, and we're going to find out why the question itself might be based on a huge misunderstanding of how we actually see the world. Okay, let's just get into it. This is the question we've all seen on forums, right? What is the real FPS of our vision? You see answers all over the place. Some say 24, some say 60. I've even seen people argue for 500. But what if all of those answers are completely missing the point? And here it is. This is the core idea that just changes everything. The human eye doesn't see in frames. It's not like a camera snapping a series of still pictures. Instead, what we perceive is a continuous fluid stream of information. So to really get this, we have to just throw that whole technology metaphor right out the window. So yeah, our first step here is to tackle this whole FPS myth head on. The entire concept, the very idea of frames, is something we borrowed from our own technology, and trying to apply it to a biological system as ridiculously complex as our vision, well, it just doesn't fit. I mean, think about it, right? A movie camera or your computer monitor, they work by flashing discrete snapshots at you really, really fast to create this illusion of motion. But our eyes, they're doing something totally different. They're constantly feeding this uninterrupted flow of data to our brain. There are no frames, there are no shutters, no refresh rates. It's a completely different biological process. Okay, so if our vision isn't about frames, then what is it about? Well, it turns out it's about something way cooler. The incredible speed not just of seeing, but of understanding. Our brains process what we see at a rate that is truly mind-boggling. Get this, 13 milliseconds. According to researchers at MIT, your brain can process and identify an entire image in as little as 13 milliseconds. Now, just to put that in perspective, a single blink of your eye takes somewhere between 100 and 400 milliseconds. This is just staggeringly fast. And what that incredible speed means is just fascinating. The professor who led the study, Mary Potter, she explains that vision isn't just about passively letting light hit your eyes. No, it's an active process. Your brain is constantly, all day long, finding concepts and trying to make sense of what it is you're looking at in real time. So this study was a huge deal. It totally shattered what we thought we knew. We went from thinking it took about 1/10 of a second to process an image down to just 13 milliseconds. Now, if you had to compare it, that speed is kind of equivalent to about 75 frames per second. And what's wild is that the brain can pull meaning out of that image, even when it has no clue what's about to be shown. And get this, the processing keeps going long after the image itself is gone. So we've established our visual system is incredibly fast. But is that it? Is it fixed, or can you actually train it to be better? Well, it turns out the answer is a huge, resounding yes. And the proof? It comes from the world of action video games. Now, to measure vision performance, scientists use this really cool concept called visual crowding. Basically, it's a test of your vision's spatial resolution. Think of it like this. How close can a bunch of distracting objects get to something you're trying to focus on before you just can't make it out anymore? The smaller that zone of interference is, the sharper, the higher your visual resolution is. And when you look at the data, the results are crystal clear. Researchers found that experienced action video game players have a consistently smaller crowding region than people who don't play those games. In other words, they are way better at picking out details in a cluttered, chaotic scene. Their spatial resolution is measurably, significantly better. But hold on, is that just because people who already have better vision are the ones who get into gaming? It's a fair question. So, to find out, they ran a training experiment. They took a bunch of non-gamers, tested their vision, then had one group train on a fast-paced action game for 30 hours, while a control group just played Tetris. And then they tested them all again. And the results? No question about it. The group that played the action game showed a significant, measurable improvement in their visual resolution. The act of playing the game, of constantly scanning, tracking, and reacting, literally trained their brains to see better. It wasn't just that good players are drawn to games. The game itself made their vision better, a direct causal link. Okay, so vision is fast and it's trainable. But what are the absolute upper limits? I mean, how fast can our eyes really detect a change? Even a change that's supposed to be totally invisible? Well, the numbers we're about to see are just staggering. Forget about your 60 Hz or even your fancy 144 Hz monitors. We're about to enter a whole new realm of flicker detection that makes even the highest-end gaming screen look kind of slow. This is where human perception gets really, really weird and interesting. To start, 800 hertz. Some people can actually consciously perceive a light source flickering 800 times every single second. And that is already way beyond what science long thought was the absolute limit of our vision, something called the critical flicker fusion frequency. But believe it or not, we can go way higher. Even if you can't see it directly, your brain can detect it indirectly through what's called the stroboscopic effect. When you wave your hand under a certain kind of light and see a series of distinct images instead of just a blur, some people can detect flicker all the way up to 10,000 hertz. And this is the absolute peak, at least for now. During very rapid eye movements, like when you just flick your gaze from one point to another, some individuals can detect an effect from a light flickering at over 11,000 hertz. 11,000. That is just an astonishing, almost unbelievable level of temporal sensitivity. So what does all of this mean, right? We've seen that vision is ridiculously fast, it's trainable, and it's sensitive to these impossibly high frequencies. All of this evidence is pointing away from that simple camera metaphor and toward a much deeper, more profound conclusion about how we actually perceive reality itself. So the whole debate really boils down to this. Is our perception discrete, like a movie made of still frames, or is it continuous, like a flowing river of information? Now, that snapshot idea, it feels kind of intuitive, right? But all the evidence we've just looked at, it points squarely in the other direction. But you might be thinking, what about those weird optical illusions? The ones that seem to prove our brain edits what we see after it happens? Well, it turns out you don't actually need discrete snapshots to explain that. A concept called a sliding window of continuous perception can handle it perfectly. It's just a process of constantly integrating new information into what we're already aware of. And here it is. This is the biological nail in the coffin for the whole discrete snapshot theory. To create the smooth, rich visual world we all experience, our neurons would have to be switching on and off at an insanely high rate. And the research shows they just can't. The biological hardware simply does not support the snapshot software. And this all leads us to this final, really profound idea. We don't passively record the world like a camera. Our brain is actively building a predictive model, a simulation of reality. It's constantly guessing what's going to happen next, and our eyes are just one of the data streams it uses to check and correct that simulation. Our perception isn't a recording, it's a continuous unfolding prediction. So we end with this thought to chew on. If what you experience isn't a direct recording of the world, but is actually a constantly updating simulation being generated by your own brain, what does that really say about the reality you perceive? And what else, right now, are you not really seeing?